Hey everyone, this is WobblyWallaby. 2023 is almost over. It has been a fantastic year for Ragnarok Mobile with plenty of updates throughout the year. Among the games I played, this game has the most frequent updates, which is fantastic for players and content creators. I'm going to highlight what I believe to be some of the best and worst changes to Ragnarok Mobile in 2023. Not everything has a worst, usually it's only for certain categories that I feel like ranting about. If there are enough comments in this video, sometimes it'll get the devs' attention, so it's more like constructive criticism. Also, fantastic news, I have codes to give away. I have 10 C, 10 global, and 10 EU codes. In the comments say, what do you think are some of the best and worst changes in 2023? Please include your Discord ID and which server you play on, such as C, global, or EU. The winners will get codes starting January 12, 2024. First, let's begin with Best New Class. This year there have been 6 new classes. Hela in February, Hulgrehen in May, Rathgricy in July, Jormungandr in September, Heinrich in November, and Ancient Artifact User in December. The winner is Rathgricy, which is one of the most powerful classes ever created in this game. It has high damage, incredible survivability, is viable for both free-to-play and pay-to-win players, and can be used in PvE or PvP. When new classes get released, people often compare them against her, since she's almost like a benchmark for insanity. Despite her being crazy overpowered, I'm happy the devs made her a hero class that anyone can buy at any time. It would have been really bad if she was limited time or cost BCC. I think the runner-up this year is Jormungandr, who is very powerful in PvP. Next is Worst New Class. I believe Hulgrehen was the worst class released. Part of this bias is due to how iconic he is in the game, yet he didn't get the overpowered treatment like Rathgricy. Hulgrehen is capable of soloing legend instances, so don't get me wrong, he's still better than Phantom Dancer.
Emotional damage!
However, I think him being melee compared to the other classes released is a big disadvantage, and him having bad movement speed makes him weak in PvE and PvP. Having to get up close to bosses and people is definitely not ideal. Even if you're melee, if you're able to have a longer range, that is definitely more ideal. Besides seeing him initially when being released, I honestly haven't seen anyone use him unironically in both PvE or PvP. With White Star Airship, he does have some potential to deal with the mobs and buff the party, but Ninja currently is better for debuffing the mobs, to the point where this is currently nerfed in the beta server. They're capping the debuff to 10 instead of allowing it to go infinite. My hope is that the devs will give more buffs to Hulgrehen so the legendary character will see more play. Next, the most improved class. I believe Begetter's update in February and Ronin's update in August were both huge for these classes. The Begetter's homunculi will no longer die and had huge damage scaling changes. That allowed both physical and magic Begetters to do extremely well in instances as well as in the void. Next for Ronin, they got huge damage increases as well as damage over time to get past the damage caps on bosses, which makes him very popular in the current meta for PSR and White Star Airship. Since Ronin is very hot right now, I'd say Ronin takes the win, and I hope the devs will continue to update existing classes to bring new life to them. Next is Best New Gacha. Music of Soul is my top pick because it provides magic classes with the much needed love for PvE. I think magic classes don't have enough tools for dealing with PvE when compared to physical classes. Music of Soul is one of the best in slot headwear that many magic classes have switched over to. My hope is that the devs will continue to give magic classes more love and more gachas to help them out so they don't feel like they're being forced to switch to physical classes. Runner-up would be It's Too Late. This one is super common for both physical and magic users and provide the much needed skill damage as well as some move speed. Next is the worst new gacha. In April, Salted Fish King had some controversy because it was coded incorrectly, so that resulted in it being too overpowered. It had to be nerfed because it would have been too busted in PvP and people were compensated, although some people might not have spent that much money if they knew what the effect actually would be. Next is the best new MVP card. I personally think that the best Blacksmith of the Continent card is the best. When deposited, it can increase the refine level of your weapon by 1, and it can even exceed 15. But where I think this really shines is it allows you to get away with a refine 14 weapon. Personally, I have plus 14 Titans and plus 14 Arbiter. I had YOLO'd both after much frustration. Getting to 14 was hard enough, but getting to 15 is even worse. So this card alone has saved me lots of stress and lots of billions of Zenny, so this is really one of my favorite cards that were released. Next is the worst new MVP card. In May, the Dark Siren card was introduced. We also have the Star version that requires 3 of these cards. This card is crazy for PvP, so I'm not saying that this card is bad, it's just that it's so strong but also really hard to get. There was a BCC box where people could purchase this, but even then the probability to get this is very low, let alone getting 3 of them. I think for such powerful cards that seem like it's doing way too much, requiring 3 of the same cards for an MVP level card is not great. They typically do this for mini cards, which are much more attainable to have 3. I think it would have been better if they could mix in other cards to craft it instead of requiring 3. Also, maybe the power level is just too insane on this one. It can create a really big gap for those who wail out and those who really wail out. Next is the best free-to-play card. The White Knight card, which drops some monsters, has the incredible effect of having a 3% damage to large monsters. This is extremely important for free-to-play players who are using physical classes and want a way to activate the 50% ignore defense effect for the Minoris card. The inside effect of the Minoris card deposit is great, but often hard to get, especially for free-to-play players. Getting damage to large monsters via armor or gachas can be very painful for new players with limited resources. Even myself, despite playing so long, I only have 2 armors that have damage to large monsters modifiers. So being able to get this from a card effect is definitely a huge savior to free-to-play players. Next is the best instance update. White Star Airship was released in November, and I think this instance was a breath of fresh air. Since it was timing based, it led to some interesting competition and added a variety of classes used in this instance. You can't just fill a party with Rathgricies and go full auto like Ponape's Secret Realm, you actually needed some strategy and coordination. Even if you thought you were whale before, the higher elite difficulties could really humble you and force you to work as a team. So good job devs for making a challenging instance that actually encourages teamwork. Next is the worst instance update. In July, the level 61 to 70 Echoing Corridor was released. Echoing Corridor is fun and challenging the first time around, but gets really boring when you have to do it each week. It's an instance that's hard to auto too, since you do have to pay attention and do things, and it's also fairly time consuming. This is the instance that feels most like a chore, and I hope they'll do something to make it less painful in the future. Next is the best free-to-play quality of life update. In July, the Time Wish machine was updated to not have items being removed. That means you could always save up for the gachas you wanted without worrying it would disappear from the machine. There are certain gachas that are best in slot, and you want new players to have access to these and purchase them when they have enough reunion proof. So I think this change was extremely important. Next is the best pay-to-win quality of life update. The Arcane Rune system introduced in November is a game changer. It gives all classes the ability to be stronger, and pay-to-win people can accelerate this process by buying them in the shop, or doing well in the very hard difficulties of White Star Airship. I think we need new ways to make classes stronger, and this was a big power boost, and this could also make meme builds more viable. Next is Best New Story. For major story arcs, Wheels of Alberta released in May versus Tears of the Tyrant in November are the main 2 to compare. Tears of the Tyrant wins for me because they are attempting to create an open world. Wheels of Alberta feels very similar to the past story arcs in terms of style and execution, whereas Tears of the Tyrant seems like something completely new and introduced an enormous map. Having a compelling story with good voice acting is important for ROM to compete with many games released these days, so I think this is an excellent direction. Finally, it is the best Blast from the Past. In May, shadow equipments were introduced, and that brought life back to the old, non-ancient equipment. I thought this was a great move since many of the old equipments were just sitting in people's storages or in the exchange collecting dust. Bringing back old or forgotten things is always great for the game, so I'm glad they decided to do that. Well, that's all. Let me know what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Here's a video that I would recommend. And if you want more of the latest Ragnarok Mobile news, check out the sneak peeks playlist over here.